everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello. Okay, get more from your Tube Screamer. No boutique stuff, no terribly expensive stuff. Standard Ibanez TS9 Tube Screamer.
Very nice. Before we jump in though, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel, costs you nothing. So yeah, click that button. We appreciate it.
And while you're there, head over to thatpedalshowstore.com and maybe pick up some merch. That is how we fund this show. Okay. Tube Screamer, no great history lesson, other than it is one of the most important overdrives of all time ever. The original version came out in the late 1970s. This one, although it is a modern reissue, comes from the early 1980s. If you want to read more,
go everywhere else.
Yeah, go online and read about it, or maybe watch one of our older shows. What we're going to do today is show you a bunch of ways in which you can use this thing, because you may have preconceptions about what it sounds like, and we'll certainly dip into a couple of those. But perhaps the point is, it's so confusing, the world of overdrive pedals, right? There's so many out there, not least the endless number of Tube Screamer derivatives. Hopefully what we're going to do today is show you ways in which you can use this, which might A, stop you having to buy another overdrive, and B, maybe just change your mind on the dear old Tube Screamer a little bit.
Indeed.
And let it be said that if you do have a Tube Screamer derivative or clone or anything like that, everything we discussed today is going to be relevant there too.
Beautiful.
Let's start by the basic thing, right? So we've got a Fender Black Panel Deluxe Reverb. This is a standard. You can go and buy it tomorrow. 65 reissue Deluxe Reverb.
I wonder what the settings are.
It's set relatively clean, Daniel. So we'll just run through the extremities of the controls to give you an idea of what it does into a relatively clean amp. I'll pick up some humbuckers so that you just get an idea of that. Right.
You forget how much gain that the Tube Screamer actually has on tap.
And how much, because one of the preconceptions is they're super dark sounding, but there's quite a lot of treble.
There's a lot of treble.
If you turn that thing up. We'll just say again, this is a completely standard reissue. Okay, some humbuckers.
Very nice. Very nice.
Maximum volume, minimum gain, less volume, more gain.
and the full range sweep of the tone control.
Yeah, there's more in it than I remember.
Yeah.
Even having been a fan of them for 30 years.
One thing with
35
this
years.
as well, don't be afraid of those extreme settings, because the sound that you may be after just may be there.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, thing one, the thing that perhaps is most commonly associated with the Tube Screamer, let's do that. Fender Strat, Fender Black Panel Amp, E flat, right? So we're in Stevie Ray Vaughan territory. This is not how to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but we're in that territory.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
it's a really nice sound.
Yeah.
But perhaps what's happening with the combination and the deluxe reverb there is that we get this quite scoopy mid sound, especially if we go on to position 2 and 4.
Right. Great sound.
It's a really nice sound,
Yeah.
but it is kind of thin.
Yeah.
And this is the original point of the Tube Screamer, right? So it just puts in this mid hump and just makes the thing a bit thicker. So we'll set it with low gain and high volume, bit of that tone.
So that passes the pub test for me. I'm walking past the pub. I hear that. I'm going in for a pint. That's amazing. And all that is Strat, Tube Screamer, Deluxe Reverb.
Yeah, and if you're using your Tube Screamer, the way to do that is to set the volume high, the gain relatively low, and just let it push the amp a bit.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Right, let's move on. I could actually feel the neck moving in the joint when I did that. So
Okay.
some attention required. Let's move on. Thing 2, this is the second most famous thing that the Tube Screamer has been used for over the years. So if your amp's running a bit of gain, and in this instance we've got a 50 watt plexi here that's fairly well cranked, we're using an attenuator to keep it sane in the room. But whether it's a JCM 800 or a JCM 900 or a dual rectifier, kind of as the metal thing, heavy rock thing started to really happen, you would see these routinely put in front of a really gained amp in order to tighten it up a bit. So let's hear the amp first. It's a great rock noise. So what you'll hear on so many rock recordings is that as a start point, and maybe it would even be louder, so it's generating more bass. And what we use the Tube Screamer for is to tighten it up, almost in the same settings that we used into the Fender amp.
So not too much gain.
Yeah.
Just a bit of push and that treble.
We'll explore it, yeah. kind of over the top.
Yeah, but you could automatically feel that bloat just goes,
Yeah.
you know, and the notes are focused, and it's a very cool thing.
So it does a couple things. Because of the low end roll off in the Tube Screamer, it gets rid of some of the thunk on the bottom end, which if you're in the room, the thunk and the extra resonance of the big cab is a really beautiful thing. But once you get it into a track, that can be overwhelming, and you'll find engineers and producers lopping off a lot of that bottom end, maybe even as high as 100, 120 hertz. Certainly 80 hertz in order to get rid of it, because it starts to become cumulative, right? Once you've got 3 or 4 guitars tracked. So as kind of rock became hard rock and metal,
Right.
it was the de rigueur thing.
Right.
And you could walk into a studio anywhere and see a 5150 or a JCM 800 or 900 or a Mesa dual rectifier with one of these in front of it set pretty much like that.
Right.
Job number 1, get rid of the bass. Job number 2, gives it aggression in the upper mids,
Right.
and just a bit more poke to the attack of the note.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up this guitar deliberately. This is not a modern sounding humbucker as such, but it's more modern than that one,
Sure.
which is from the 60s. It's cool. It's killer noise, isn't it?
It's wonderful. Nothing, and I haven't played with that sound before, and it's immediate.
Yeah.
That you recognize that sound.
Yeah.
You know, because you've heard it on hundreds of albums, but it's so interesting. The feel of that thing just going "Ooh," and tightening up. It's like, oh, okay, almost like to the extreme degree. You know, when you put a wah pedal on,
Yeah.
and so you're filtering all that stuff, and you know, obviously the wah is a much more extreme version of that, but just that bloat being tightened up gives you a lot more, you know, freedom to, you know, you're not trying to move as much air per note. It's awesome.
Okay, let's move on. There are other pedals on the board for a reason, and we're going to get into that now. Okay, the third and fourth things we're going to look at is when you stack the Tube Screamer with another overdrive pedal. We've deliberately chosen the Blues Driver. It's super popular. It's a very different sounding pedal, and we would consider it, even though it's not really, as a slightly more full frequency overdrive.
Yeah, it's less mid boosted.
Yeah. And we're going to just, for thing 3, we're going to show you what happens when you put it before the Tube Screamer, before the Blues Driver. And for thing 4, we're going to show you what happens when you put it afterwards for 2 very different effects. We might also add some reverb and delay, or at least delay, to be a bit of a talent helper. We'll go back into the Fender, I think, so that you're not getting the overriding factor of the Marshall's overdrive. The Fender's set pretty clean. So
Yeah.
here is the Blues Driver then, with a Les Paul. It's a pretty nice all-round overdrive sound.
Lovely. It's lovely.
What I use the Tube Screamer for in this situation would be not necessarily to lift the volume with it before the Blues Driver. It's not going to lift the volume massively. What it's going to do is really fill in the mid-range and make it much more mid-rich and vocal. So you get more sustain, you'll get more feedback, and you'll get more kind of harmonic interest.
Okay.
Probably easier just to demonstrate.
That sounds ace.
And as much as I love tube screamers as solo boosts, and we'll come on to that, that pre to thicken up the mids, make it fat, and just fill in. Just hear that's humbuckers, obviously. See if it does a similar thing for the telly.
Okay, because is a preconception that tube screamers and tellies don't mix. So this will be really interesting.
Let's see.
Never used a tube screamer like that before.
No?
It's ace. It's ace. Again, I've preconceptions about them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, because the thing that you think it's actually for is what we're going to do next. Okay, the last thing we're going to look at then, we've switched the order of the two overdrive pedals. So in the last example, the tube screamer was in front of the blues driver, now it's after. As you can see on the board, haven't changed the settings of the pedals at all. So Dan, seeing as you were playing last on that guitar, I believe.
Yes.
Now listen to what the tube screamer does. Some of the elements of the previous sound are still intact, so we still get that mid hump.
Yep.
But now it's much more pronounced.
Much more pronounced.
Because instead of it shaping what the blues driver is doing, it is now controlling everything on the end. But what we have access to now is a bigger volume lift.
Yes.
So if we do this, this is how I used it for years,
right,
as a kind of solo boost. So you've got your, let's say the blues driver is your kind of always on, or your main overdrive pedal that you really like.
Super interesting.
If that amplifier had a bit more headroom, i.e. if it was a twin reverb,
Okay. It'd launch you into the stratosphere.
you'd have a much higher volume lift. As it is, it's just going into overdrive nicely. Kind of brings us back to the top of the show, which is what it was designed to do.
Right.
It was originally designed to be used in conjunction with an amp on the edge to get that really pushed amp kind of sound. I'm going to make a prediction and say you far preferred it before the Blues Driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't... With it after, it became... the sound of the Tube Screamer was everything.
Dominant. Yeah.
Very dominant. But with before, it just juiced the Blues Driver in a way that was... Because I've got the Blues Driver set up for a rhythm sound that I really like.
Yeah.
It just embellished the Blues Driver as opposed to, hello, I'm a Tube Screamer. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Hopefully that was useful. Some things you can do with your Tube Screamer. Get more from your Tube Screamer.
Love it. Well done, mate. It's awesome.
Yeah, nice. Well, there'll be more in this series. We will pick other pedals and do similar experiments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot. I have. Brilliant.
I've learned that I'm probably going to put a Tube Screamer back on my pedal board again.
Love it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed some merch. It's the main way we fund the show. T-shirts and hats and strings and pedals and loads of stuff there. So go and check it out.
Yeah. Thank you to our patrons on Patreon. It's another way that you can support the show. We're very grateful for everyone who does monthly giveaways and all that stuff. And if you want links to buy any of this stuff, that can help us out too. Push the description text down and you'll see some links there, for which we are grateful.
Indeed. So have a great day and we'll see you very soon.
Cheerio.
Bye.